And welcome back to Face the Nation. Well, after Congress reached the last-minute deal to raise the debt ceiling and avoid defaulting on the nation's debt, the stock market took off. The S&P 500 finished with a record high Thursday that was beaten again on Friday. But the deal only lasts a few months, and we could find ourselves right back on the brink early next year. So to talk about what that all means, we're joined by Mark Zandi, the chief economist of Moody's Analytics. Mark, let me just ask you the basic question. How much was the economy hurt by this shutdown?
It was hurt. By my calculation, it cost us about $24 billion in GDP. That's the value of all the things that we produce. So just to put that into context, it shaves about a half a percentage point from growth in the fourth quarter. And I had expected the economy to pick up pace by the end of the year going into next, but now I think that's very unlikely. I think we're stuck in this very slow growth, lackluster kind of environment.
Well, I guess that leads to my second question. Does the reopening now, is that going to bring money back in somehow? Could it be recovered during the holidays?
We'll get a lot of it back. The shutdown was disruptive to lots of different parts of the economy, to trade, to mortgage lending, to small business lending, obviously to tourist destinations, but a lot of that will come back. But I think pervading the entire economy is this uncertainty, which I think is the effects of that are corrosive, have been accumulating over the last several of years. And obviously, given the deal, the nature of the deal, that we're going to take this into next year, it will continue.
And what about the just sort of how this is perceived in other countries around the world? Does that have an impact on the economy itself and our credibility?
Yeah, it does. I think global investors forgive us a lot because it's not clear to them where else they put their money. I mean, you look across the world, would you put your money in Europe, China? Where would you go? So we're the beneficiary of that, but that only takes us so far. And I think global investors are starting to really doubt, when senators and congressmen actually openly question, whether it's okay to default on the debt or other obligations. I think that makes people not only nervous here, but across the globe, and ultimately that's going to cost us in the form of a higher interest rate.
What do you think, do you see anything changing since Standard & Poor's downgraded the nation's credit after the last one of these messes that we went through?
In terms of the political brinkmanship, no. I mean, this last round of brinkmanship, from my perspective, was particularly debilitating and disconcerting, particularly because we had people who are lawmakers actually openly debating whether we could, if not pay on the debt of our Treasury, pay Social Security recipients. Was this an okay thing? I don't think that kind of conversation is particularly useful, and it makes me more nervous.
Well, when this was happening, and I've asked some of the questions that people answered by saying, oh, they're just trying to scare the markets and so forth, when I would ask people, do you really want to let the country go into default? What do you think would have happened? I mean, can anybody know? Because this is stepping into the unknown.
Well, Bob, my job is to opine about a lot of different things, and some things I say with less conviction than others. I can say with a high degree of conviction that if we go down that path, it's going to be cataclysmic for our economy, and not just for a month, two, or a year or two. This is going to extend out for decades. So we just can't even contemplate going down that path. And in my mind, the most important thing that could come out of this process is to all of us decide that we're just not going to do this again.
Well, I think the Senate Republican leader has convinced himself of that.
Yeah, and he sounded pretty convincing. So I think if we get a group of folks like that in the room and they're all coming to even a reasonable, in my view, grand bargain would be great. It'd be nice if we got that, but it's not necessary. All that's necessary is we have to decide that we're not going to shut the government down and we're not going to default on our obligations. And if we do that, the underlying economy is in pretty good shape, and that will shine through, and we will be in a pretty good place.
Okay, Mark, I want to thank you for coming by this morning. We'll be back with our panel of astute analysis in just a minute.